Welcome to the 30-Minute Hour. It's the personal development podcast for entrepreneurs who are looking to level up and become unstoppable. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. Joining me as always, you know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells.
Happy Monday, folks. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Monday comes around fast, doesn't it?
What episode is this, Eric?
I think we're on episode, this is 144 is the official number.
I think we're in trouble. We're in trouble, Steve, because I used to say, Eric, what episode? He'd run that number off. It feel like we've been in these 140s for a long time. I think we might have to go check that, Eric. If we're not at 150 by now, Eric.
No, it's like it is 144.
Okay.
I believe that is the exact number.
You
asked me that the one time I didn't actually look at the exact number. So,
so we were really at like 137 before.
We're really at 160 probably, but yeah.
Well, we are here and happy to be.
Me, we've done a lot of shows. Just take our word for it.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, as you can tell, this is not your everyday podcast.
No.
And I neglected to warn Steven backstage that we do things a little different here on the 30-Minute Hour.
Yes.
But the good thing is that you can check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. If you want to watch us live, then you can always listen to the replay of these episodes on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify and any of those other places that you like to listen to your podcasting. So I want to tell you about the sponsor for the week. You may recognize the sponsor for the week because it was the sponsor for last week. So Ted, when I mention the sponsor, it's probably you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah.
I've heard of that.
So our sponsor for the week is the Bernie L. Bates Foundation. Again, they do great things for the community. They have programs to help high school students with scholarships. They do things to help less fortunate in the community. And on tomorrow, December 14th at 7 p.m., they're sponsoring the third part of a 4-part webinar series. So this is part 3. It's the Discipline of Now webinar series that we'll be doing tomorrow. It's tomorrow, Tuesday, December 14th, not September, December 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern time. To register for it's a free webinar, but we do ask that you register. You want to go visit www.blbinc.org. So that's www.blbinc.org. For our sponsor of the week, Bernie L. Bates, the Bernie L. Bates Foundation. I see we have quite a few people starting to log on now to the live version of this. Please make sure you're putting in the comments, say hello, be prepared to ask your questions, and we'd love to be able to communicate with you in real time. And this is one of the reasons I just love doing these live shows, because you can talk to the audience. If it's just recorded, all the feedback you get is with the reviews. So definitely make sure you're chiming in. And don't forget to share the show.
Share the show, Stephen. Share the show.
All right.
That's right.
I'll share the show.
Nice. It didn't take much convincing. He's in.
I'm in. I'm all in, man. I'm here.
That's right. That's right. Our goal for these episodes is to help you to laugh, to learn, and ultimately level up. And if you feel like we've accomplished that for you, please make sure you go ahead and share the show with someone you know that could use the message.
Or if we didn't accomplish that, share the show anyway. Come back next week, give us another shot. We're trying to get, it's continuous improvement here.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, give us a chance to get better. You know, don't stop us from being great. Share the show. Oh man, and don't forget about the What Now movement. Again, I know people are joining from the movement. You can go, it's a Facebook group, the What Now Movement. Make sure you click to join. Today is Marketing Monday. You can go ahead and post your business opportunity, your venture within the movement, and we'll be happy to share and promote and all that good stuff. So, Ted.
Yes, Eric.
I've got something that's on my mind.
Please share, Eric.
So today I want to talk about how to become a world-class entrepreneur.
Whew.
How to become a world-class entrepreneur. So there's a guy, Robert Herjavec. He's one of the sharks on Shark Tank. And he's considered to be a world-class entrepreneur. That's how you get on Shark Tank. You're on there every week as one of the sharks. But he's also a competitive race car driver. And he wrote this book. It's called Driven, How to Succeed in Business and in Life. And he uses the analogy he learned from his racing experience, because he was often asked the difference between what makes the difference between a world-class race car driver and everybody else. I think there's a lot of similarities in being world-class. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But he's often asked that question, what's the difference between a world-class race car driver and everyone else? So according to Robert, the difference shows up, you got to listen to this, in what they do when they hit a corner at 200 miles an hour and the car begins to spin. That's when you start to see the difference. And he explains it this way. He says, when your car begins to spin, you notice the wall ahead of you. You don't want to hit it because you risk losing the race and ultimately your life. So the normal reaction is to look at the wall because that's a threat to avoid at all costs. But you're taught not to look at the wall because if you do, you'll definitely hit it. So unlike the novice drivers, the best drivers in the world-class drivers, they avoid looking at the wall and they fix their eyes on where they want to go, which is the track ahead of them. So the beginners look at the wall when they spin. The world-class drivers are always looking. They always keep their eyes on where they're going. So here's the big takeaway. Now, this is where we need your undivided attention, right? I know you like to listen to us while you're driving. This is where we need you to just pull over to the side of the road. We know you like to listen while you're on the treadmill in the gym. Just press pause on the treadmill. Just press pause. So, Ted, is there anything else that people need to do?
Steve, this is the time you got to put the ham sandwich down. No matter how good the sandwich is, it's about to get good.
All right.
That's right. Put the ham sandwich down. And we really need you to lean in on this part. We're talking about how do you become a world-class entrepreneur. Here's the big takeaway. You must focus more on the opportunity than you do the danger. You want to be a world-class entrepreneur, you have to focus more on the opportunity that's in front of you than you do the danger. And, Tony Robbins, he always says success leaves clues. But I believe success leaves clues even if the success is in a different arena. Right? It doesn't have to be always apples to apples. So, like, for example, our guest today, he travels year-round and interviews world-class rock climbers. And he teases out their habits and routines to find out what got them to where they are today. And I'm telling you, I'm sure there's correlations between the best rock climbers in the world and the best entrepreneurs in the world. I bet you we'll find some similarities. If not, this will be a long show.
Work with us, Steve. There's got to be a way. He put us out there now. We got to make it. We got to make it work, Steve. We got to make it work.
But no, so our guest today, he is an elite level rock climber and the creator of the Nugget Climbing Podcast. He left his engineering job in early 2020 to move into a van full time to pursue his passion of rock climbing.
That's right.
The podcast has been a tremendous success. It's hit 500,000 downloads in the first 18 months.
What?
That's phenomenal.
Right.
He's doing the thing. And his goal is to learn from the best in the world. He hopes to apply the nuggets he learns from his guests to improve his own climbing and to help share their inspiring stories. So please join me in welcoming to the 30-Minute Hour podcast, Stephen Dimmitt.
That was a very kind introduction. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here with you guys. Having fun so far, so I made the right decision. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're in here now, Steve. You're in here now.
It's like Stephen, you've climbed past the point of no return.
You climbing. You're here. You're here now.
Yep. Going to the top.
All right. But no, welcome to the show. It's truly an honor to have you on. I remember when we were talking initially several weeks or so ago about coming on. I got excited from talking to you and hearing your story. And I could say we've never had a rock climber. No. Hey, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you are the first rock climber.
Exactly.
Have either of you ever tried rock climbing in a gym or outdoors?
I think I may have done it like in a gym. Yeah. I didn't get too far though. Yeah, I didn't get too far.
Yeah, I've done it at one of those. There's a rock climbing place in Northern Virginia here. We took the kids. The kids went on this play day. I have a young son, and he was getting up the wall like Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Kids are good at it. Kids are really good. Yeah.
So, Stephen, let's just say I didn't fare quite as well.
No shame in that.
Yeah, that's a story for another day. So, I'm curious to know, like, when and how did you develop this passion that you have for rock climbing?
I was taking rock climbing for the first time when I was 18 years old. So I was a little bit late to the sport relative to a lot of kids now. A lot of kids are starting similar to gymnastics at age 6, and that's what they do with all of their time. But I was a little later. I started at 18. A friend of mine took me out rock climbing here in Leavenworth, Washington, which is 30 minutes from where I grew up. I loved it. I was fascinated by it. I couldn't even tell you why. It just clicked. And then there was a climbing gym at the university that I went to, and I ended up getting a job there. And that's when everything shifted for me. I just fell in love with it. I started basically living at the gym. All my free time I would spend there. And it's just grown from that.
Wow.
Awesome.
That was
I'm just
14 years
curious
ago.
to know. What's that?
That was 14 years ago.
14 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you had this passion. You knew you just loved rock climbing. So what happened that led you to decide, okay, I work as an engineer, but I'm just going to make rock climbing my full-time thing. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I've been making all of my decisions around rock climbing for a long time, almost since I started. And so throughout all of my 20s, I was living in Bend, Oregon. I moved there so that I could climb at Smith Rock, which is a world-famous rock climbing destination here in the States. And I had a job as an engineer because I'm not a good enough rock climber to be trying to go pro or anything like that. But I just was obsessed with it. And I always, even though I had a full-time job, I was working in aerospace and making decent money, I always felt internally like rock climbing was what I did, and then this engineering job was my side thing, like that was kind of how they fit together in my brain. And so it was always a dream of mine to find a way to make that a reality, to really embrace doing it full time, or to find some sort of remote work or flexible seasonal work or something that would allow me to travel more, because rock climbing, I would love to do it all. I knew I wanted to do it all year round. It's very seasonal. You're always trying to chase kind of autumn weather, cool temperatures and things like that. So the spring and the fall were nice where I live, but the summer's terrible. You're stuck inside. And I was doing a lot of my climbing on the weekends or after work in the evenings at the climbing gym. So yeah, it was just a lot of years of sitting in my cubicle and just racking my brain. Like, what just trying to come up with ways to find a different lifestyle for myself that might open up that opportunity to live on the road and chase the climbing weather and travel to all these amazing destinations that I'd seen in climbing movies and in the media and had dreamed of visiting. So,
Steve,
yeah.
Question for you. In your rock climbing, do you have something wrapped around you, or just like kind of freewheeling it, man? Just climbing without anything wrapped around you?
Yeah, most of the time I'm wearing a harness. I'm tied into a rope. My preferred facet of climbing or discipline of climbing is sport climbing or lead climbing. Those terms are kind of interchangeable. So I'm tied in. I have a rope for safety, and then someone has come along and prepared these different routes on a cliff. So there's a line of bolts going up the wall, and I'll climb up with the rope below me. And as I make my way to each bolt, I'm clipping into a piece of equipment that basically gives me safety checkpoints the higher I go. So I'm hanging on with my hands and using my feet and not getting any assistance from the rope, but it's there in case I fall. And falling is very common. I fall all the time when I go, and it's actually very, very safe. But yeah, that's the facet of the sport that I pursue. I also do a lot of bouldering, and for bouldering, I'm climbing on much smaller boulders, usually very, very difficult. It kind of started as practice climbing, and it's become a sport of its own. But for that, there are these things called crash pads. So we'll all hike in with these big foam mats on our back and basically create a portable gymnastics floor underneath the boulder, and then we can climb on it without ropes and things like that.
No, that's cool. That's cool, Steven. Just doesn't sound like a thing for me though. But
I get that a lot. Yeah.
That whole falling thing, man. I don't know. Maybe I'll come check you out, man. But I don't know if I'm gonna join you though. But
right on.
Yeah, I'll take the pictures for.
You're not alone. You're not alone. It's a really unnatural thing, and a lot of people, even people who have no fear of heights or anything like that, it just takes time to get used to it, to learn to trust the equipment, to grow your comfort zone like anything else. Yeah. But it just feels scary. It's so unlike anything else that we do as kids if you've never climbed before. So there's often quite a psychological learning curve for people when they get into it.
Yeah, my thing is I want to have the whole look though, Steve. We're gonna go shopping before. I want to look the part. So I want the hat, I want glove, whatever we need. But I'm not going up there, Steve.
But you'll look good.
I'm going to look good. That's all right. Look the part.
I'll hook it up.
That's right.
So I'm curious to hear more about the transition. I mean, did you just wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm done with this engineering. I'm just going to do the rock climbing full time? Or like what was that? The reason I'm asking is because we have quite a few entrepreneurs, or maybe they're working in a corporation, but their passion is their business and they want to make that jump. So was it a thing where you just jumped right in, or you planned it out, you reverse engineer? How did that go?
Right. That's a great question. I'm very deliberate. So I created a plan. I saved up enough money to be able to try it for a year and not have to rely on it. Not have to monetize the podcast. But I mean, the answer is I was the guy that was stuck in my cubicle, just obsessively listening to podcasts. And a lot of it, it's changing nowadays, but there wasn't a lot of training information for rock climbing until maybe the last 5 or 10 years. So I was listening to everything I could find on strength training, listening to gymnastics coaches, do interviews and things like that. And that kind of morphed, and I got more interested in business and creativity and entrepreneurship. And Tim Ferriss was a huge influence on me. I listened to a lot of his podcast, and it just finally clicked one day, like, oh, there's this podcast that's couched in the context of rock climbing that has this same depth to it, trying to tease out these habits, routines, ways that we can get better that doesn't exist yet, that I would love to listen to. And I don't know what it was about that idea that resonated so strongly, but for some reason I knew that I could be that person. I started climbing later in life. I remember what it is like to be a beginner. I was 18 years old, so it doesn't feel that long ago in the big scheme of things. And I've gotten to an elite level, and I'm friends with a lot of people who climb at, difficulty levels that I aspire to. And I feel like I felt like I could be a bridge and be the person that asked the right questions to the experts, so that the rest of us could learn from that and apply it to ourselves in our lives. So it just clicked like, oh, there's a podcast here that I would love to listen to, and I think I can make it. And that started me down the path of, doing research and saving money to leave my job and to start practicing doing interviews, because I wanted to make sure that I actually enjoyed it before I committed myself to it. So I did several interviews before I ever published anything. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
That's great. So you say you practiced your interviews. So how did that go? You just
right away, I made a really long list of dream guests, and these were professional climbers, but there were also, I noticed there were 20 names or 30 names on the list that were friends of mine. People that climbed at a really high level that lived like me. They lived in Bend, Oregon, so that they could climb at Smith, or I knew them from traveling or things like that. But there were people that I knew I would be able to sit down and chat with. And so I just started with a few of those people. I said, hey, I have this vision for this podcast I'd love to make. I'd love to interview you. What do you think? And they were, 3 of my friends were graciously willing to say, I'm happy to try this. And if you're not happy with how it turns out, then you don't need to publish it. And that's fine. So I think I did 4 of those before I published anything. And I ended up publishing 3 of them. And one of them was just kind of for fun and for practice. But I mean, that was so important. So often entrepreneurs, we get some idea that we're really excited about, but a lot of people feel like they have to take this gigantic leap of faith without testing anything first. And, are you sure that you're actually going to like this different lifestyle or this different career path that you're, excited about jumping into? So, I had traveled a lot. I had lived on the road for climbing in the past and taken time away from work to do that. So I knew that I wanted to do that side of it. I had no idea if I would make a good podcast host or if I would enjoy it. So it was important for me to try that and test the waters before I went all in.
So Steve, how, family, right? How'd they feel about you saying, hey, I'm about to go all in on this rock climbing thing? Like, were they all like, you know what? Sounds like great deal, son. Go ahead and quit that engineering job and go ahead out there and follow your dream.
I think I softened them up over all the years. They're pretty used to me being totally obsessed with climbing. My parents have always been incredibly supportive. I think they're just glad that I got a degree, that I, worked for a while and have a resume that I could fall back on if I needed to. So, I mean, my mom did encourage me to get a recommendation letter from my boss, even though I had no intention of coming back to aerospace engineering. But yeah, they've been really supportive, actually. But I think it was all the years of them kind of slowly getting used to, me making this thing a priority, I guess.
That's interesting. It kind of reminds me of, when I used to work in the government, and my grandmother, would hear me talking about my business, goals, and it was real cool until I said I was going to leave my government job, and she was just like, "Baby, now don't leave that government job. You can do them both, can't you? You can do them both, and don't leave that job." So eventually, Steve, I left that job. Now I didn't tell her for a while.
There you go.
So after I had been doing it for about a year, she didn't know I was still going out with a suit on. I was going someplace, so she figured I was still going the same place. And then eventually, I said, I left to start my own company. I said, well, baby, how's it going? Keep it low in front of you. Just keep doing what you're doing. So at that point, it was cool. But it's kind of like what you're saying, which is, your family, they want to see you have that stability, that foundation behind you, because that whole rock climbing as a deal was probably not something that, was something that they really could grasp at first.
Right. Absolutely. And it's actually been really interesting to see how the podcast and them actually being able to see numbers, like I tell them how many people are listening, and I get support from my listeners on Patreon. So they see my Patreon numbers go up, and they see my income increasing. And I'm, making connections with brands now that I'm excited to partner with, and them seeing that tangible success in those numbers that they can relate to. It's been fascinating. It's actually like, changed the way they see me with this weird thing that is rock climbing. And it's been pretty cool. I didn't expect that, but it's been a really positive piece of this whole thing that's been a pleasant surprise.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And now Ted brought up kind of, you could hear naysayers within the family, but what about, did you have to deal with naysayers like with your friends, colleagues, coworkers? Were people trying to talk you out of it?
Surprisingly, not too many. No, I don't know if anyone. It's hard because like I had a very clear vision for the thing I wanted to make, and for whatever reason, I don't know where the confidence came from for this project, because I've never done any interviewing before. I just kind of knew that I could make the podcast that I wanted to listen to, and I suspected that a lot of other people wanted to listen to it too. There was a need for that, and it's hard to communicate that before you can show people that, right? So I just trusted myself. I also didn't need it to work. I remember I had a interview very early on with one of my heroes, and he's a local climber at Smith Rock who is in his 60s now, and he was pushing the sport of climbing back in the 80s. And I went out to lunch with him, and we hadn't recorded anything yet, but I just told him what I was doing, and I took notes and picked his brain for a couple hours. And I left that lunch, and I just thought, man, even if no one listens to this is going to be the most fun I've ever had. And I just kept that in my mind. Like, this is going to be at least a year, because I have money saved up, of travel, of finally going to all these places I've been dreaming of climbing, and of making all these connections and hearing and sharing all of these incredible stories. And maybe people will listen, but maybe it'll just be this amazing, rich experience for myself, and that's okay too. So I think that was really helpful. I was able to just focus on trying to make the best podcast I could make without that pressure or stress of this has to work, or this has to reach a certain amount of people, or I have to make this much money, those sorts of things. Yeah. That's my train of thought there.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you because I want to. Did he lose his train of thought?
Go ahead. It'll come back.
So, why do I see Steve as that friend that you're just hanging out with, and then next thing you know, you're looking around, where's Steve? He's climbing something. Like, hey, Steve, come on, man. You just can't be climbing stuff.
Yeah.
Everywhere we go, or, well, let's hang out, and every place we're going to go is always got to be someplace where we're climbing something. Can we just go to a bar and watch a game, man? Do we got to be climbing stuff all the time? I mean, was it like that?
I mean, a little bit. I started later, and I found this community of people like me that were addicted to this weird thing, and we'd all go do it together. So a lot of our, I remember in college, we would go bouldering at night sometimes. We'd just go climb on the buildings in the campus.
See what I'm saying?
Right.
Yep. See, Eric, did you ever know that bouldering was a thing? If I had been climbing bouldering at Norfolk State University, I probably would not be here right now. I probably would have fallen off, or I'd be locked up. There's this guy up there climbing on top of the science and technology building. Go get him.
Exactly.
But no, it's interesting. I think you talk about a parallel with business and rock climbing, is that it almost sounds like a cliche, but I think it's so important. It helps to find something that you would do for free and you're genuinely passionate about.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
It's not like you were saying, this has to work. Failure is not an option. You're like, I genuinely enjoy this. So let's see what happens.
The other thing that gets me, Eric, is he keeps saying that he started this later in life, like 18. I'm like, you're 18. That's later in life.
Well, that's rock climbing. There's no way I'm going to compete with the kids that started at 6. It's kind of like starting gymnastics as an 18-year-old.
Sure.
But the podcast I started at age 30.
Okay.
So as far as an entrepreneur, that's probably more normal, right? That's probably pretty typical, and it's never too late. I mean, I remember the passion was for the climbing. I didn't ever expect to find a second passion. I thought, I'll just find a job that I can suffer through that will allow me to climb as much as possible. And it turns out I fell in love with this other thing that is the podcast, and they go hand in hand. But for several years before that, I was, reading books and, like I said, listening to podcasts and reading blogs and just trying to come up with other career path ideas. And I tried starting other companies. I built an Amazon business that was not very successful. And I tried to pursue writing and shared a lot of my own personal nuggets, if you will, or my own lessons learned from climbing in life. I tried a number of things that just didn't really work. And it always felt like I was trying to push a boulder up a hill to try to get people to pay attention, to get them interested in it, to get them to follow along. And what I talk about a lot with people is when I found the podcast, and it was just this thing that I wanted to create for its own sake, and it turns out other people had that need as well. It just felt like pushing a boulder down a hill, and it just has taken off, and I can't even keep up with it.
No, that's great.
Yeah, that's excellent. Saying you're the host of this Nugget Climbing Podcast. You interview the world-class rock climbers, teasing out their habits and their routines. What are those common traits that separate the world-class rock climbers from the rest of the pack?
Yeah, it's a lot like any other athlete. I mean, a lot of them started young, but pushing that aside, they are just obsessed. They're singularly obsessed. And I've hung out with a lot of these people and become friends with them now. And a lot of pro climbers have other jobs. They're ambassadors for brands, so they have to do speaking engagements, or they have to do some writing or things like that. But they never compromise on climbing. And that's one of the reasons why they're so good. They make sure that they get their climbing or their training in no matter what. They're consistent, and they've been showing up and doing that, putting that work in for their entire lives. And another thing, I think there's a lot of failure in climbing. I talked about the style of climb I do where I'm tied into the rope. The goal is to go to the bottom to the top without falling or without weighting the rope or taking any breaks. And very often climbers will spend months, weeks or months, or even sometimes years perfecting the sequence of movements on a piece of rock to try to do that in one go without falling, to send the route, as we say, to succeed on the climb. And there's so many days where you fall off and you feel like shit, and you just go back to the drawing board. And I think climbers, anyone that sticks with it for a long time, has this built-in humility that comes from that I think is really powerful, because when you care more about getting good enough to succeed at the thing that you really want to do, you're willing to do anything. You're willing to ask other people for advice and be open-minded, and you're willing to, work on your weaknesses and be really vulnerable, and, go to the gym and just suck all the time because you're working on things that you're bad at compared to everyone else. It's hard to do that stuff, but all the best climbers, they care so much more about the climb that they want to do and about trying to level themselves up. It's almost like they're willing to do whatever it takes.
Wow. That Eric, I know where you're going on that, Eric. Go ahead and do it. I think we're thinking the same thing on that.
Yeah, so you mentioned this thing with built-in humility. And you would think someone's a world-class rock climber, but you're finding that the ones that are at that elite level have this built-in humility. That's very interesting. Talk more about that.
That is interesting, because as you asked that, I'm like second guessing myself, because they're also very, very confident, and some of them are quite proud. So it's almost this paradox, like they've learned this lesson from all this failure. The top guys are still trying to perfect the very basic things, and gals, they're trying to perfect the basics. Anything that makes them better, they're willing to try it. That's very open-minded and humble in a way, but they're also able to show up to a competition or to a rock and say, I'm the best in the world, and I'm going to do this right now. And, it's hard to teach that. I don't know if I have that. I don't know if I can learn that sort of competitor killer instinct sort of thing that a lot of these people have, but
that's me, Steve.
That's you. All right.
But I'm gonna have that on the ground. Like everybody's gonna be like, oh,
but you're gonna look great.
That guy must be nice with it. Like, let him get, and then it's like, when are you gonna go? I'm gonna let you guys go first. Y'all go ahead.
I want to make you look bad.
Yeah, let me see if y'all can do it first. That's me.
No, I think that's a huge takeaway.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think you could probably describe like the world-class entrepreneurs the same way. They're confident about what they do, but at the same time, they're coachable. Right? They recognize that they need to get better, that they don't have all the answers. They have to focus on the basics. They don't just think, oh, I already know that. They're the ones like Zig Ziglar, who's the Hall of Fame speaker, and I was in the National Speakers Association, and I would hear these stories that he would go to the conventions and he would literally be sitting up front taking notes. And you look, this guy at the time was making $50,000-$60,000 a speech. He's a celebrity. You figure he'd get up there and teach the class. He's the one that's up there taking pages of notes. You know, and just I've noticed that so I'm glad there's that parallel even with the rock climbing.
Yeah,
that the best in the world, they know that they need to work on getting better. So that's speaking great. Of the best in the world, so who's considered? We look at rock climbing. Who would you consider to be the Michael Jordan of rock climbing? Like he's that person everybody just looks up to, or LeBron James, the Tom Brady, whoever. Like who is that person, and what can we learn from him?
Climbing GOAT. Who is the rock
climbing GOAT? Exactly. Yep, I have an answer for you right away. It's this Czech guy, from the Czech Republic named Adam Ondra, and he's probably in his mid-20s now, maybe late 20s. One of those wunderkinds, you know, who was climbing probably harder than I am now at like age 6, just incredible. And I mean, he's a good competition climber too. He actually placed 6th in the Olympics, so he's incredibly good at that. But as far as outdoor rock climbing across all different styles of the sport, he is the guy. He's a couple steps ahead of everybody else. And I've been thinking about him as we've been having this conversation because he inspires me so much. He's already so good, and he just dissects and tries to perfect every element of his craft. And I remember watching a film with him, and he was taking ballerina lessons just to try to get a little bit better at some type of movement. I didn't even understand what he was trying to accomplish by doing this, but you know, something posturally or something in his movement that he didn't feel totally content with. And he was studying from, you know, some master ballerina teacher, things like that, you know, like this guy's willing to do whatever it takes. He doesn't care if he looks stupid doing it. He's still trying to get better, even though he's already at the top.
That's interesting that you mentioned that with the whole kind of ballerina thing, because I think they were saying some of the great football players. I think it was Jerry Rice and some of those guys back then. They said were taking Lynn Swan taking ballet classes.
No way.
And just to yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I haven't heard of any players recently doing it, but they may be and just not saying anything. You know,
right.
You know, but that's cool. And maybe you can get them to come on the show with you the next time. You know, get them. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I'll try. I still haven't had Adam Ondra on the show on my podcast yet, but
they're not really
top of the list.
Eric, they're not really friends, Eric. I thought that was your boy. You can't get him on the show with us, man.
Just give me another year.
That's right. Just messing with you. Yeah, that's cool.
So you're saying most of the world-class rock, they start early, the rock climbers.
These days
they have camps and coaches and all of that like they do in other sports.
Yep. I actually just did an interview with the head coach at the Vertical World team in Seattle. That's a team that's kicked out a bunch of World Cup champions, national champions, and things like that. They actually just had 2 of their girls win the bouldering and the sport climbing national championship a few weekends ago. And I just had a conversation with him, and you know, he has like 90 kids from the Seattle area on his elite climbing team, and they show up and train with him 3 days a week. And then many of them climb 5 days a week total and climb on their own as well. And he's already got 10-year-olds that are on pace to be much better than some of the best now. So,
wow,
it's exciting. I think climbing, you know, I can't even really relate to the highest levels of the sport. It's hard for me to comprehend, even though I it's what I do every day. And I think it's still young. I think there's still a lot of room for growth, and it's really exciting to think about what the next generation is going to be able to do.
Well, the thing, Eric,
Spider-Men, Spider-Women.
Right. Eric, so since he said that, again, 18 was kind of starting late, we got to give it up, Eric. It's not happening.
I gotta let it go.
Yeah, we got to let it go. Now, what we can do is we can dress the part, right? We can dress the part. We can kind of walk around and, do all that. But other than that, that's about it.
I can walk around with my rock climbing gloves and all that.
That's it. Cool outfits, man. I mean, we can really get the look going.
That's interesting. Just the parallels with rock climbing to these other sports and even in business. So what other takeaways are there for the entrepreneur? What can our entrepreneur listeners duplicate when you look at some of these other habits or traits of these world-class rock climbers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. This is really simple, but I think it's so important to do something that you enjoy. It doesn't have to be a passion or if you like your job, you never work a day in your life. It doesn't have to be like that, but you should enjoy at least what you're bringing to the table, for your business or what skills you're bringing or what you're trying to create, a new product or things like that. I've never seen anyone force it all the way to the top. You can force yourself and get better, but then I actually tried to do this myself. Before climbing, I was a musician, and that was my number one thing. And I actually studied music in college. I did a Bachelor of Arts in Music along with my engineering degree. And I studied it in college because I knew I wasn't driven to get better the way that some of my friends are. I kind of had to force it. I had to create this external accountability with my schooling, and it just it just didn't work. Like, I just burned out, and it backfired on me, and I hardly play anymore. It's you have to, if you don't love what you're doing now, keep thinking about what unique skills you have, what you find yourself doing in your free time. Like I said, I'd never interviewed before, but if I zoom out and look at my career path and my habits in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense. Like, I was always very social. I always had an easy time meeting people. I was a manager. I was good at communicating. I was a really good auditor. I was very detail oriented and had lists, and I could go into an audit with a check sheet and keep track of all the things I wanted to hit. And I used those skills in interviewing. I just never considered looking that far outside of my lane as an engineer. So yeah, just get curious about the skills that you already have and the things that you enjoy. And maybe there's another way to use those things that you haven't thought about yet.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. And your podcast, you're now up to like 800,000 downloads.
That's right.
I mean, that's just phenomenal. Came out of the gate with 500,000.
Steve was like,
"It's crazy."
That's right.
It's crazy, man. I have these analytics, and I have like this little world map, and it shows all the countries and it shows where people are listening. And I look at that some days, and I'm just like, "How did this happen?" I have listeners in South Africa and China and like Singapore. Is there rock climbing in Singapore? And like all over Europe, and it's crazy. It's so much fun. Yeah.
So why do you think it's grown so fast?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've thought about that a lot. There were climbing podcasts before mine. I've definitely drawn inspiration from others, and I want to give credit to them. But I think podcasting, the format it really thrives on depth and authenticity. And for me, all my favorite interviews when I was in my cubicle listening to lots of stuff, like whenever I felt like I really got to know someone and see a deeper side to them and get to be a fly on the wall and listen to a deeper conversation, that just fascinated me. We don't get a lot of that in our day-to-day lives, especially working in the corporate world. Everything's kind of, polished and packaged in a certain way. And so, I started with something very niche, but then because I'm an obsessed climber myself and have done it for a long time, I decided to double down on that. I ask very, very specific, very geeky questions, often very self-serving questions. Like, I want to know this about my own training and what I should do and what I should change. But of course, that context is so interesting and so relatable for everyone else listening. Like, here's someone actually coaching this guy through how to get better. I learned so much from that experience. So I think it's the combination of like really going geeky and deep with climbing, but then I'm also very interested in these people as people. Everyone is so different. Everyone has things to teach us, way beyond climbing. They've all had these interesting lives of ups and downs and failures and lessons. And I'm just as interested in that as I am in getting better at climbing. So the combination of that, I think, it's just unique. There's no other format that captures all that in the same way that a podcast does. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, and I'm sure it had been a long time that you were thinking about being where you are now, right? Where you're just doing what you want to do. You rock climb, you're podcasting. So as you look now and you look back, has achieving this level of success, is it all that you thought it would be back when you used to think about getting to this point?
A great question. I mean, it's amazing. I feel grateful for it every day. That's the short answer. I feel blown away and I feel grateful for it every day. I'm not very good at stopping and taking a deep breath and just like, this is awesome. I'm always what's next? I'm always I've got really big goals for my own climbing. So I'm always focused on that. I want to create as much value for listeners as I can. And the more people that, get involved and are listening, I almost feel like this obligation growing to give them more and more and more. So, but it's incredible. I mean, I have big goals still, and it's connected me to so many people, and it's created such a community. That's a part of this whole thing that I never expected or anticipated. I feel like I have this giant tribe, this giant family of listeners who know me really well. I bet you guys feel this way too. Like, people that listen every week, they get to know you guys really, really well. And if someone reaches out and says, "Hey, I love your podcast. This has really helped me, and you guys are so fun," and all this stuff, it's like, oh, we're already friends. If you get along with me that well and you're willing to keep coming back every week, then
your family. Absolutely.
Your family. Yeah. I mean, that's been the best. Yeah. That has been the best surprise that I didn't expect at all from this whole project.
Steve just seems like such a good dude, Eric.
Right.
Like I said, I'm serious, Steve. I'm gonna come out there. I'm bring Eric along. We're gonna come out with our rock climbing gear on, man, and we're gonna hang out with you. And we're gonna watch you climb, man. We're gonna watch you climb.
Just to be clear, Ted and I are gonna be on the ground.
We're gonna watch you climb. Because if you said 18 was too late to get started, or right on the cusp of being too late. Both of us are a little older than 18, so
I'm going to be eating those words this whole time. I know a lot of people that have started climbing much later than that, and they have tons of fun. So you can still start and learn a lot and have fun starting at any age.
I'm going to let you know. We're going to dress the part. We're not trying to climb anything. It's hard enough climbing stairs sometimes, Steve. So trying to climb some rocks. Yeah, man. Right. I'm good.
We'll be on the ground and say, "Wow, look at Steven go."
Steve is going, man. Look at him. Looking like a little squirrel up there, climbing up there, man. Climbing all up and down the walls, man. Look at him. And then that whole thing, that buildering thing, man, that's the thing that got me, man. You should start climbing some buildings. That's what I'm talking about.
It's really fun.
While you're climbing the buildings, I'm on the elevator. I'm going up that way. That's how I'm a climber.
So, Steven, what's next on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so I'm actually, as you can see, I'm in a house. Normally, I record stuff sitting inside my van. I'm visiting my folks here in Washington. I'm actually in the house that I grew up in.
Nice.
And stayed with them through Thanksgiving, and actually had planned to leave by now, but I had some van trouble, so the van's been in the shop. But the van is fixed, ready to hit the road again, and I'll be hitting the road on Wednesday. heading down to California to chase some sun and some dry rock, and then I'll go to Texas for the rest of the winter. So yeah, I'm excited. I've been here for 4 or 5 weeks, and it's really nice. It's been a really nice break from the road, but I'm antsy. I'm antsy again to get back out there. So
you just drive around and you do the show from the van?
I do, yeah.
Oh man, that sounds like some interesting stuff, Eric. We're gonna have to check that out. We have to check that out, man. Just doing it from the van.
Yep. A lot of them are in person. I meet these people. You know, a lot of us climbers are trying to climb at the same places at the same times a year. Like I said, we're chasing the same weather, you know, that autumn season, so to speak.
Yeah.
I do a lot of them remotely too, but it's just, and honestly, COVID really helped with this. It's just so amazing how easy it is to do that. So I will literally be in like a Walmart parking lot with my computer tethered to my phone, doing a Zoom call and recording it with someone in the UK, you know, some pro climber that has been a hero of mine forever. It's like, what is happening? This is crazy. Wow. But yeah, it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
We got to step up our game, Eric. In 2022, we're going to do it different than a van. We're going to get like a, I don't know, pickup truck. We're going to do something. We're going to do something a little different. Start doing our show from a, you know, kind of a mobile unit like Steve is doing.
Mobile studio. There you go.
That's right. I like that. Mm-hmm. Till it gets cold. Till it gets cold, Eric. We're going to be right back up in the house.
It could be like a spring, summer, early fall type thing.
That's right.
Oh, man. So now we're at our final segment. It's called Write This Down. And this is where we each share specific nuggets from today's show that we want the entrepreneurs who follow us to write down and go back and implement or use to improve themselves. So, Stephen, you're the guest of honor. We'll start with you. What is your point for Write This Down?
I love this segment. This is great. Yeah, I'll share a quote that has been on my mind lately, that's been resonating with me lately. And I just find so much wisdom in this quote. And it is, how you spend your days is how you spend your life. Mm-hmm. I think that's such a valuable point of reflection. You know, like you zoom out and look at today, look at yesterday, look at the day before that, look at tomorrow. That's your life. Do you like it? Do you like how you're spending those days? Because they add up really quick. And before you know it, years go by, and that's what you've done. So I think that's a really powerful jumping off point, or, you know, oh, wow, something does need to change. And I hadn't realized it.
Wow.
How you spend your days is how you spend your life.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's something to think about.
Yeah.
It's deep.
Sit around all day eating chili dogs, man. That could be it, man. You got to do something else with your life. Man.
I mean, I think the take I get from that is, I think you have to be really focused on taking action in the direction of what you want. You can't just expect things to naturally, because if not, like you said, the day you'll discontinue. Before you know it, you're older, much older. So that's a great point, man. All right, Ted, tough act to follow.
You know, listening to Steve, you know, as he was just talking about everything that he's been doing, and just, you know, just it kind of does make you just stop for a second and really you know, give some thought to like where you are, right? Like, it's kind of like what I got out of this was, you know, appreciating the level that you're at while preparing for the next. Right? Like, I think you got to really appreciate the level that you're at. And it sounds like Steve really appreciates the level that he's at. He's having fun. He's like, wow, man, like I didn't know I'd be here, right? And while thinking about the next, like, you know, because he could easily be thinking, okay, how do I get this to, you know, another 500,000 or you know what I'm saying, 1 million. But it's like, I'm appreciating where this is. Like, I'm enjoying what I'm doing while still thinking about how I get better, you know, for my next. And I think we're always talking about it as entrepreneurs or professionals or whatever. It's always about next level. There's always going to be a next level. Kind of going back to this whole, you're going to like this, Eric, right? How you go back to the whole rock climbing thing, right? You're grabbing that rock, and then there's another rock, It's always another rock, right? It's always another place that you can go and go higher with the rocks, right? But at each level, right, there's some accomplishment there. And it sounds like that's something that Steve is doing, and I think as listeners we need to write that down and think about, hey, where are we at now? Let's appreciate where we are now, but still preparing to go higher. Don't ask me to say that again. I mean, it felt real good rolling out, so just kind of go with me on it. But yeah, that's what I'm getting.
Yeah, I do. That's a great point, Ted.
That's
man.
good.
Thank you, Eric.
I got a tough act to follow. My goodness.
Thank you. Steve got me going, man. Like I told you, I'm ready to go out there and just because I'm trying to help you, Eric. I'm giving you a little more time to get it together. So, when I get out there with Steve, man, I'm gonna have my gear on. What do you do after rock climbing? Do you go get a beer? Do you go get wings? I mean, what's the thing that you do after that? I'm helping you, Eric.
Yeah, that's an ideal day. Have a great day of climbing, hopefully complete a climb that you wanted to do, and then, go to the brewery, get a beer, get a burger, get some fries.
There you go. I'm glad you didn't say go get a salad or something like that.
I would have 5 years ago, I would have said that. And there's actually been a really positive movement in climbing, similar to gymnastics, but many years later, a lot of climbers are, and I did this for a while too, just starving yourself, trying to, cheat your way almost to the next difficulty level. And man, it's just not a sustainable path. It just, it kind of works. And that's why so many people do it. It kind of works for a little bit, but then the wheels come off and everything falls apart. So trying to embrace my body type and eat enough and just train harder and things like that.
So climb and then get a burger.
Yes.
That's it. All right. Here.
There you go.
There you go.
All right. So my piece for this, write this down. It goes back to something you said earlier, Stephen. You said that you made rock climbing. So you were working as an engineer, which was technically your full-time job, but you also were rock climbing. But you switched it around. You said that rock climbing was really your plan A, and engineering was like your plan B. I think that's powerful, and I think that's how we have people who are listening to us right now who they work a job and they've got this thing they feel like is their calling, their purpose, this venture. I think you have to have that same approach. I think you have to approach, you shouldn't even call it a side hustle, right? I think you need to look at it this is plan A. And this corporate job is my plan B.
Yeah.
Because I think otherwise, you'll struggle to give it the necessary time, energy, and respect that it takes to grow. Mm-hmm. If you think of this is just a side thing, you're not going to grow a side thing, but you're going to really be motivated to grow your main thing. So I think that's what I took away from that. I think hopefully those of you that are in that situation, that your purpose is your plan A, your job is your plan B.
I love that. I would literally call my engineering job my side hustle. I mean, it was kind of a joke, but I would literally do that. I would say right. I got to go, do this side hustle thing. 9 to 5 every day.
That's awesome. Good. Well, we certainly want to thank Stephen Dimmitt for sharing all the things he shared about world-class rock climbing and how it relates to being an entrepreneur. So what's the best way that people can connect with you?
Yeah, if you want to check out the podcast, go to your podcast app. It's everywhere where podcasts are found. Type in The Nugget, and it should be the first thing that pops up. The full name is The Nugget Climbing Podcast. But yeah, you can find it on any of your podcast player. For you guys listening, if you've never, pursued or looked into rock climbing too much, I'll give you a couple episode recommendations. One of my recent ones was with Kyra Condi, episode 98. She was one of the Olympians representing the U.S. at the Tokyo Olympics. And she had severe scoliosis as a kid and had a spinal fusion and has this basically disability and is still rock climbing at the highest level. So that was a really inspiring one. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. That's a really good episode to start with. And then as far as social media, I'm on Instagram at The Nugget Climbing. And I have a personal Instagram at Stephen Dimmitt, just my full name. And then the website, thenuggetclimbing.com. You can find the podcast there and show notes, and you can reach out and connect with me if you want to.
Great. Again, Stephen, thank you for sharing what you shared. And speaking of sharing, don't forget to share the show.
Share the show.
Share the show.
This is a great show
Right.
today, Dimmitt. Man.
Thank you guys. This was really fun. I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you. This was definitely a blast, and hopefully we help people to laugh, to learn, and to ultimately level up. And don't forget, you can go back and listen to the replay of this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any of those other places. But again, thank you to Steve Dimmitt. This concludes our episode for this week on the 30-Minute Hour Podcast. And until next time, keep climbing.
Keep climbing.
All right.